Have you ever wondered how far a person can go? And what about science? Can science do anything in the name of humanity? If you don't watch this video to the end, you will never fully understand what lies in the dark corridors of the human mind, and how an experiment that started with good intentions can turn into a nightmare. This isn't just a history lesson. This is a confrontation that will make you question the potential within you, me, all of us. Today, I will take you to the most chilling and unethical psychological experiments in history, which will not only make you uncomfortable in your seat, but also make you ask, can humanity really go this far? So if you're ready, buckle up, because after what you're about to hear, your perspective on science and human nature may change forever. Before we start, here's a quick question. Do you think science should have limits?
I'm telling you.
Write your answer in the comments now, and we'll talk about it again at the end. The monster study. Words that stole innocence. It all began in 1939 in America. Psychologist Wendell Johnson wanted to prove whether stuttering was congenital or learned. Sounds like such an innocent goal, doesn't it? But this innocent goal would darken the lives of 22 orphan children. Johnson and his team went to an orphanage and divided the children into two groups. The children in the first group were fluent speakers, and they were constantly given positive reinforcement like, "You speak so beautifully and properly, you're wonderful." But the second group, this is where the nightmare began. The children in this group also spoke normally. However, the experimenters systematically subjected them to cruel criticisms like, "You're starting to stutter. Don't pause when you speak. Speak carefully, you're doing it wrong." They constantly belittled them, finding fault in their every word. And the result? Those innocent children, who had never stuttered a single word in their lives, began to develop serious speech impediments within a few months. They became afraid to speak, avoided social situations, and withdrew into themselves. Instead of curing stuttering, the experimenters had psychologically wounded healthy children with their own hands and made them stutterers. Many of these children carried the scars of this trauma for the rest of their lives. This experiment was later named the monster study, because only a monster could inflict such deep wounds on the souls of innocent children just to prove a theory. Now, stop and think for a moment. Could you affect a child's future this way, just for the sake of curiosity? The Little Albert Experiment. How fear is taught. Next up is perhaps the most famous, yet equally cruel experiment in the history of psychology. Little Albert. The year is 1920. John Watson, a pioneer of behaviorism, wondered whether fear was innate or a learned response. The subject he chose to find the answer to this question was just a 9-month-old baby, Albert. At the beginning of the experiment, they showed Albert a white lab rat, a rabbit, a dog, and various masks. The baby was not afraid of any of them. He even reached out to touch the white rat. He was a loving, fearless baby. Then the second and terrifying phase of the experiment began. Whenever Albert tried to touch the white rat, the researchers would strike a steel bar with a hammer right behind him, creating a very loud and frightening noise. The baby would startle at the sound and begin to cry. White rat. Loud noise. Crying. White rat. Loud noise. Crying. This process was repeated many times. Soon, Albert began to cry in terror at the mere sight of the white rat, even without the loud noise. Watson had achieved his goal. He had taught fear. But wait, the nightmare wasn't over. Albert's fear began to generalize. He was no longer afraid of just the white rat, but of anything white and furry. A white rabbit, a white dog, even Santa Claus's white beard. So what happened to little Albert afterward? After the experiment, his mother took him and left, and no one knows if Albert was ever treated for these artificially created fears. He may have lived his entire life in fear of everything white and furry. A scientist had planted the seed of a lifelong phobia in a baby's mind, just to prove a theory. My blood runs cold every time I hear about this experiment. This is one of the most painful examples of how science, which should serve humanity, can completely disregard it. The Stanford Prison Experiment. Do good people do bad things? And we've reached the top of our list. Perhaps the experiment most adapted into films and most debated, the Stanford Prison Experiment. The year is 1971. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo was seeking an answer to a simple question. What do good people do when placed in an evil situation? Does our inner goodness win? Or does the evil of the situation take us over? For this, he set up a mock prison in the basement of the university. He selected 24 completely healthy and normal university students and, with a coin toss, assigned half of them as guards and the other half as prisoners. The guards were given uniforms, batons, and mirrored sunglasses. The prisoners were dressed in simple frocks and were referred to by numbers. It was all a game, or so they thought. Things started to get out of hand on just the first day of the experiment. The students in the role of guards embraced their roles so much that they began to act cruelly and sadistically towards the prisoners. They would wake them up in the middle of the night for roll calls, force them to do push-ups, make them clean toilets with their bare hands, and apply unimaginable psychological pressure. Remember, these were normal students who, just a day before, were attending classes on the same campus. The prisoners, though they tried to rebel, were quickly subdued. They became passive, helpless, and traumatized. Some fell into such severe depression that they had to be released within the first 36 hours of the experiment. The experiment, planned to last for 2 weeks, was stopped after only 6 days when Zimbardo's girlfriend, also a psychologist, visited the prison and, horrified by the brutality she witnessed, rebelled, asking, "What are you doing to these boys?" Zimbardo himself had become so engrossed in the experiment that he couldn't realize what was happening without a warning from an outside eye. What did this experiment show us? That power, authority, and a uniform can turn even an ordinary person into an unrecognizable monster, and how prone we are to act as a role requires when it is given to us. Now ask yourself honestly, if you were a guard in that prison, could you be 100% sure that power wouldn't corrupt you? I can't wait to see your answers in the comments. So there you have it, my Tulvivi family. These experiments show us the dark side of science, how dangerous it can be without ethical rules. The monster study proved that words can be a weapon. Little Albert showed how easily fear can be taught, and the Stanford Prison Experiment demonstrated how the darkness within us can emerge under the right conditions. Thanks to these experiments, we now have ethical boards. No longer can any scientist conduct such cruel studies on human subjects. These painful experiences have guided us to protect future generations. So, in a way, the suffering of those people was not in vain. I am grateful to you for watching this video, because talking about, questioning, and remembering these topics is our greatest duty as human beings. We, as the Tulvivi family, don't just look at interesting stories from the past. We learn from them to better understand today and tomorrow. Now let's go back to the beginning. Which of these experiments shook you the most and why? And the most important question, do you think similar secret experiments could still be happening today, in places hidden from view? Let's start a storm in the comments. I want to hear everyone's opinion. To make you feel part of this family, don't forget to like the video, share it to get this important information to more people, and if you haven't joined us yet, subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Because the topic we'll cover in the next video will be, believe me, at least this shocking. Until next time.